The next speaker we have for today is a young lady that she's just amazing. Her name is Leila, and she's going to share her experience with Medicaid assisted treatment. I'm sorry, it's misspelled on the slide, but I'm going to let Leila share her experience, strength, and hope on MAT. And thank you for coming, Leila.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi.
Right.
Okay. Hi. My name is Leila Tibbs, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. As you all know, there are many pathways to recovery, and I'm here to share about myself and how MAT, medicated assisted treatment, helped me achieve my goals in staying heroin-free. My mother is a Moroccan Israeli immigrant, and my father is a Black man native to DC. As a child, both of my parents were in active addiction. My mother told me one day that my dad was in the hospital and I couldn't see him, and I was really confused. My father and I were very close, so I figured maybe he was in jail, or my mom just wanted to protect me. So after a while, my sister told me that my father had gotten into a car accident and passed away. I never got to go to the funeral, and I never got my closure, and I never really believed the story that they told me. At this point, my mom went into a deep depression and was in full-blown addiction, which left me feeling confused and abandoned by my mother and father. My mother would drop me off with my family members and friends and tell me that she would come back the next day, but the next day turned into days sometimes. I felt like a burden and unwanted, constantly sad and confused. As time went on, the stories of my father didn't add up. One day I told my aunt I knew what really happened to my dad, and she explained that nobody wanted to tell me the truth and hurt me. My father was murdered due to a bad drug transaction. I was so hurt and resentful. All my feelings started to flood my head, and I didn't know how to deal with them. I believe that was probably the first time I had like a nervous breakdown. In school, I had a very hard time. I was working against home trauma and untreated learning disabilities, so I always felt the odds were against me. In middle school, I started smoking marijuana and experimenting with alcohol and cocaine. In high school, I got into the rave and club scene where drugs were everywhere. It was easy for me to stay out all night and sleep over my friend's house to avoid going home and dealing with my reality and my feelings towards my reality. By college, I decided to move to Boston, Massachusetts with my friend and go to school to get away from home. Running away was a pattern I had developed in my life, fight or flight, and I was doing both. I was using a lot of drugs to self-medicate and avoid the empty feeling in my life. One day, I went to a party and I met what I thought was the most interesting man in the world. Surprise, surprise. He was a writer, and I loved hearing his stories. He started grooming me very early. The first date we went on, he picked me up and there was a bag of heroin in plain sight. And he said he wanted to be honest with me. And nothing sounded better to me than somebody being honest with me. He would come to my apartment manic and flustered and go to the bathroom and use and come out relaxed and chill. This looked really good to me. It's exactly what I needed. So I asked him to try, and he was happy to show me. And as they say, it was off to the races from then on. This was the first of many tumultuous relationships in my life. Chaos was all I knew, or trying to fix crazy to avoid confrontation, hurt, and abandonment. Eventually, I got my associate's degree, and I got accepted into Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. My plan was to run away again. I got into the dorm, and my boyfriend basically moved in with me. I found my own personal drug connection, and my habit grew. And as my habit grew, my performance in school suffered. I couldn't keep up. I started hanging out with people that traveled, hopping freight trains, and I saw another opportunity to run away. I dropped out of Pratt the semester I was supposed to graduate, and I hit the road running. I traveled across America, hopping trains, panhandling, and hitchhiking. But no matter where I went, I was always there. The feelings in me and no amount of drugs were taking them away. And I got tired. I moved back to Maryland and went to my first inpatient treatment. I ended up leaving against medical advisory to go back to using. I decided to join a Suboxone clinic in Baltimore, but it just wouldn't stick. I kept using. I was exhausted with life, one chaotic relationship after another, not being able to get along with my family due to my instability. I told my drug dealer I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't have enough money to buy enough drugs to do it. He told me that if I slept with him, he would give me the drugs I needed to kill myself. This was my rock bottom. I understood the life I was living was no longer the life that I wanted to live. So I went to the store and I bought a razor blade, and I went home and I tried to cut my wrists. The blade didn't cut my wrists, and my grandmother came down and found me hysterical and called the police. The police came and took me to a mental hospital where I stayed for several days and then was transferred to inpatient again. This time, a friend of mine contacted me and convinced me to run away again. I got back on the road and I traveled all the way to the Midwest and then back to New York. In New York, I got a call that my license was suspended. I had to go back to Maryland to clear up the issue. When I got there, I was informed that I had a warrant, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Somebody must have used my name. This wasn't me. But it was me. When the police had come to my house that night, my grandmother had let them come into the house and search the house. And with that, they charged me with all the needles and bags that I had never thrown out. I went to court alone to face my sentence. Turns out I had the toughest jail in Montgomery County. He was also in recovery. He offered me probation before judgment with the deal that I had to go to treatment, get a service position, go to meetings daily, and write a book report with probation and the weekly UAs and check-ins. All I knew is I did not want to go to jail, so I complied. At this point, I joined my first MAT clinic. I had a plan to go get a high dose and basically get high for free. I wasn't ready. I was still not completely focused. I couldn't completely commit, and I kept the bad behaviors, selling food stamps, panhandling, and I just wasn't getting what I needed or doing what I needed. I was just getting medicated and leaving and continuing the same insane behaviors. My urinalysis came back dirty for marijuana, and they wanted to send me to treatment. Back to inpatient. I couldn't afford to go to inpatient and admit that I had messed up, because with probation, I would have gone back to jail. I would have gone to jail. At this point, I called Montgomery Recovery, and a slot was open miraculously that day. So I started there at Montgomery Recovery, and I started to gain my footing at that clinic. I was giving clean UAs, and I had a counselor, Big Ed, and I could hear his voice today, one of the best people I've ever met in life. And I was so excited. I was telling him, yeah, I have clean UAs. I'm doing it. And I could hear his voice. He said to me, Leila, you ain't working no program. And I was so confused. I was like, what? A program? I don't know what that means. So I had to figure out what he was talking about. So the first major part of my newfound program was getting my mental health in order. I had to find a therapist and a psychiatrist. And let me tell you, that was not an easy task. I had to kiss a lot of frogs before I found a prince with all of those situations. I finally found a therapist that fit me, and after a year, she was retiring. I called her 24 hours before our last session to cancel, and she encouraged me to come in and end our relationship properly. I realized at this point I never really had a healthy goodbye, and I went into our final appointment and had a healthy end to our sessions. It was the same thing with the medications. I had to take several medications before I found one that actually worked for me. It was hard for me to accept that I may be on medication for the rest of my life. I never wanted my family to know I was on drugs. I didn't want them to know I was on methadone. Throughout my whole process, I kept everything a secret. But I finally found a medication that felt okay for me, and I gave it a chance. Eventually, I found my therapist, Zeke. Shout out to Zeke if he's out there listening, if he tuned in. He had a more holistic approach, and he taught me about mindfulness and facing my feelings with a kind and loving manner rather than facing my feelings with shame, fear, and guilt. I started off seeing him twice a week. Then I got into a place where I could go in once a week. Eventually, when I moved away for several years, we maintained contact. And now that I'm back in the area, we started our sessions again. I was able to stabilize with all of the tools I had learned with Zeke, and I came off the medication I was taking, and I was able to maintain a healthy lifestyle, and I was able to have a good relationship with my family and have healthy interactions with people around me. My next step of my program, I decided to commit to NA and AA. I liked it, but I always felt like an outsider because of the stigma of MAT, and I was a medical marijuana patient, and this was an abstinence-based program. Eventually, I found Smart Recovery, and Smart Recovery had a more harm reduction-based program. Finally, the pieces of my newfound program were coming together. I completed probation after a year and had all my charges expunged from my record. I got treatment from NIH for my Hep C, and I was cured. I started working again, and I felt like I was in a good place to start my detox from methadone. I was able to save money, and I got an apartment in Washington, D.C. This meant I had to leave the clinic and go to a new clinic where nobody knew me. I had detoxed down to 20 milligrams in Maryland, and my new clinic in DC was not going to continue my detox because I was a medical marijuana patient, and technically that made my urinalysis positive. My caseworker recommended that I switch over to Suboxone through my psychiatrist, and I complied. After the first 2 or 3 days, I decided I was done. I stopped taking the Suboxone and I started detoxing. After about a month, I became stabilized and I never looked back. I always stayed in contact with the staff at Montgomery Recovery for years because I was so grateful for all the help they gave me. I wanted them to know that the work that they did saved my life. I would periodically be invited to speak at the same women's group that I attended. I recently moved back to Maryland and got my real estate license. I felt completely unfulfilled with my newfound career, but also very empowered to have gone back to school and succeeded in my class and the state exam. I got another job before COVID and I was still really unhappy. About a year prior, I looked into becoming a peer support specialist, but with my family's encouragement, I did real estate. Quarantine started and I decided to commit to what I wanted and to listen to my spirit guide. I was offered a job and they told me that I had to come in for urinalysis in a week, and I thought it was important to tell them that I'm still a medical marijuana patient and to be honest and upfront. I was passed up for the job in that position. Although I was desperate for work, I was okay with that decision, and I started my mantra, my new mantra, which was, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. About a week later, Montgomery Recovery offered me a position as their recovery coach. Everything has come full circle for me. 8 years after starting my path to recovery, I was able to look back and reflect on all the hard work I've been doing all these years. My ability to now be accountable for my actions, my ability to stay honest no matter what the cost, and my ability to be patient, and my ability to forgive myself. It's taken me years to write this story, let alone share it with anyone. I'm grateful to be a part of this community, that I can share my experience and hope, as well as learn new things from my peers and my coworkers. Everything happens in divine time and divine order. I'm super grateful to have found a path that works for me and to be able to share my experience and hope with others. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you guys listening and letting me share.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for sharing.
Thank
That
you.
was amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for sharing.
So proud of you, Leila.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions or anything they wanted to say or ask me, I'm open to that.
I would like to ask a question. Like, what are there a lot of MAT programs here in Montgomery County? I haven't found many.
There are several. There's some in Tacoma Park. There's some in Rockville. Montgomery Recovery. I like to shout out, hey everyone, I know you're all tuned in. I had the greatest experience there. I was at another clinic before. I find that, they're very personable. They care about their patients. It's not just a number. It's an actual person. And if anybody has any questions, I can put my email in the chat box, and you guys can, if you need any resources in terms of finding a clinic in Montgomery County or Frederick or Maryland in general, I could always help.
Yes, I would
I
love.
have a question.
Yes.
Is medical marijuana like a form of MAT? Or is that separate?
It's different, but I feel like in some clinics they're accepting of it. In other clinics they're not accepting of it. For me, in my opinion, I used it as harm reduction. You know, it helps me not using heroin and not using other medications like Xanax, because I had anxiety problems and things that, you know, and also helping me sleep when coming off detoxing. It was just different things that it did help me with. And mind you, in the process of using marijuana, I had to be mindful of that too, because I didn't want to use it to take me out of myself. That's where I had to be very careful. And if I ever felt like I was in that zone, I had to pull back. And the whole process of going through MAT and going every day and learning to have like a structure in my daily routine, all of that helps me be able to be more responsible about, you know, using medical marijuana and not abusing it. So it was all a process. It all fit into my life. It all fit into me being able to get a job, me being able to have relationships with people, like in terms of like even being able to say goodbye to my therapist. Saying goodbye to people was a terrible thing for me. I just could not say goodbye. So all of these little pieces along my journey have made me the woman that I love today.
Thank you.
Okay. For some reason I had locked the meeting. I don't know why that is, but anyway, how I did that. All right, you can ask LaDonna to log back in now. Are there any other questions or comments for Leila? Okay, then.
I kind of wanted a question. I just can't find my way back to. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Leila, I kind of want a question. I asked. You mentioned that you went to AA and NA, and you felt like an outsider. Now, did you just feel like that, or did they kind of make you? Did you feel like an outsider because you were you were using medical marijuana?
I think it was a little of both. You know, obviously being fresh into the environment, I was there was some level of rationalization of why I didn't want to be there. And then there was also, yeah, people saying like, you're not clean.
Right.
So that was something that I had to deal with. And also in terms of developing the strength of finding my place in my journey.
Right.
It was helpful to me. You know, I didn't internalize it like, oh, I'm not clean, I'm never going to get better, but I just had to find a path that fit me.
Okay, and you mentioned Smart Recovery offered a more harm reduction. So, and I must say that I can't remember ever being at a Smart Recovery meeting before, but so they are receptive to people coming in, I guess, using, of course, the MATs, but also medical marijuana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. Just wanted to fully understand, you know, how that, and we're supposed to have someone on here from Smart later.
Yeah,
later
it was
session.
it was really great. And I recommend some of the clients that come in to us, like sometimes people just, you know, it's hard. Sometimes it can be hard being an MAT and going to NA and AA. So I always like to have these resources available to people so that they know it's like, you know, when you say you're in recovery, that's when you begin your journey in recovery.
Mm-hmm. So you would, let me ask, and then the second thing is congratulations on being offered that position. And man, that's awesome. And so Have you had the conversation with anyone yet about medical marijuana and taking that as their pathway or MAT? And is that what you've talked to people about before? Or have?
Definitely. And
So,
I try to be responsible about, you know, how I share with them, because like I said, and as an addict, as addicts, we can cross a line, you know what I mean? And you have to be very self-aware. And something that was important to me in my journey was my self-awareness. You know, it was important for me to be able to listen to other people and listen to their advice and not do the same things, insane things that I was doing, but at the same time gaining that ability to listen to my spirit guide, you know, because internally I believe that we all have a director, you know, and it's whether we listen to that direction or, you know, we choose not to. And that builds strength in me to come to a point today where I'm able to trust myself and trust my decisions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was amazing, Leila. I am very proud of you. And like I said, I will be in touch with you because I want to know more about those MAT clinics and things like that. I would love to come on the town hall. And that was just amazing. And you know, it's kind of awesome. While you were sharing, we got a $500 donation to Tree of Hope. So
Thank you. I love it because it's so important that, you know, people who can't afford to do this, so we all have a message, you know, and each of us have a message that is going to help somebody. You know, it might not help this person, but it may help that person. And I am a testimony to that. And I find it so important to come back and to give back. And especially, you know, for me, coming full circle of going to Montgomery Recovery and now being able to have a position working there, it's like my heart is so full. And I, you know, for so many years, I had that emptiness, and following my spirit guide and listening to myself and trusting myself and all the hard work that I've done, that I have come to a place where I can accept that and be proud of myself. And just to be at the place that saved my life, and for them to be able to see me and how far I've come is just so important to me, and important for me to show them because their work worked.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's thank Leila for a great job.
Thank you.
Yay.